Facilities planning requires a lot of coordinating, planning, and overall discussion of facilities and future needs. This video will provide the resources that you need to navigate the processes for your facilities. School leaders have a hard time finding resources. A lot of times there's the need, but they can't match the resource with the need. And so we help do that and facilitate that process. One of the ways that we do that is we help them find out what the actual process is to obtaining a new facility in their area, whether that's meeting with a local government entity, the school district, and a lot of it starts just with their community. What are their community needs? And so we help find that out first. That's really the philosophy of the NACA Inspired Schools Network, is a community-led design, right? And so we want the communities to actually be the ones that are developing these schools.
When I visited NACA in 2015, there were several things that resonated with me and stayed with me after that visit. The first was that they were a community-based organization, community-driven. That's so incredibly important, especially for us Indigenous people. Everything we do is in community, and so it's super important that that be the driving force. The second factor was that it was a school of and. So it was a school that was committed to cultural identity and academic achievement. I thought that that was really, really important. As a former teacher, as a teacher leader, as a consultant, as an instructional coach, I've been in a lot of schools. NACA was the first school that I had ever been to that it was both. That's what we're trying to recreate here in Denver. The visit to NACA was a life-changing experience for me. I had never seen a school like it. My first questions to our community members here in Denver was, do you think we need a school like the Native American Community Academy in Denver? 9 of our community members, along with myself, formed the founding committee to get started, and that was back in 2016. We had 5 listening sessions during our application process. 3 of them were adult listening sessions and 2 of them were student listening sessions. So we had high school students who were attending Denver Public Schools, high schools at the time. And what we heard overwhelmingly was that our students do not feel like they belong in the schools that they were attending. And it didn't matter whether they were doing well academically or not. Denver Public Schools graduates about 50% of their Native American population. That is a decades-long problem. It's a problem that they have not been able to fix. And then the second thing was definitely cultural identity, not having to check your identity at the door when you go into schools. And so our kids, and myself, just as a successful student, you do kind of figure out how to navigate those spaces, kind of have to put who you are aside to successfully navigate those institutions. And then of course, academic preparedness and whole child supports were the other 2 things that we were hearing overwhelmingly from those listening sessions. American Indian Academy of Denver was built from the 4 touchstones of belonging, academic preparedness, cultural identity, and whole child supports.
The first step in the process is actually finding out obviously what you need, but a lot of that has to do with finances, right? And it has to do with the resources that are available to finance that. The big step in this process is actually the budget. If you can get the budget right, then you can start to meet that need and figure out where you can find those resources. It takes some technical experts. A lot of times you need an architect. Sometimes it's a community planner. We have what we call facilities master plans that we help schools accomplish and create and develop. Usually that's where they start, and then from there they can create like a capital master plan.
Through some planning grants through the Colorado League of Charter Schools, we were able to hire some consultants, which you definitely need to help with the budget creation and also just drafting an enormous charter application. Our charter application, I think, was 150 pages long. We really needed folks that were familiar with our authorizers process and familiar with the internal workings of how the process goes and how approval happens.
You need to start looking at what is the approval process? What government entity is going to be involved? I know in the Navajo Nation, it's been places like the Indian Health Services. It could be your local county, city, state. You need to figure out what are the local approving bodies? What's the local approving authorities? Once you recognize who those people are, then what is the process to actually get approved to be in a building? That has to deal with codes and approvals from the local fire department sometimes. And so you need to start figuring out who do you talk to and when do you talk to them and how can technical experts help you. So after they've developed the resource, then it's just a matter of developing a proposal to that funding source and figuring out the timeline on that. You know, obviously they have to be approved for that resource, right? For those funds. So once they're approved for that, they can start the process of actually looking at contractors and developing that whole process. Whether it's a renovation, we help them develop like an RFP, request for a proposal or a bid or some type of process like that that'll procure all of those funds and procure those contractors. Once we do that, then they can actually start on the project.
In February of 2020, we had already located our facility, which is in a shopping center centrally located in Denver. And so to be able to find something that a single site charter could afford was pretty amazing. I think what's really special about our situation is that we're in one of the last neighborhoods in Denver that have not been gentrified, and we are really a part of community transformation here in this neighborhood. As Native communities, this is all pretty brand new for us. Finding folks that understand the mission and vision and are really committed to it is super important. Our school has 4 phases of construction. The first phase was approximately 10,000 square feet. This is a former retail space that was the Department of Motor Vehicles for many decades. That was the first phase of construction that opened in fall of 2020. The second phase of construction was a temporary space. It was, I think, about 1,700 square feet. We had 2 classrooms and then improvements to 2 ADA bathrooms. The third phase is 4 classrooms. It's another retail space, 2,000 square feet. Now we have taken up the whole eastern end of this shopping center. The fourth and final phase is the build out of the basement, which is also about 10,000 square feet. That phase will include an elevator, 2 stairwells, additional bathrooms, classrooms, and all of that kind of stuff in the basement.
We continue to be part of that process by meeting with them weekly, with the school leader, with the architect, with the project manager, maybe the construction company. So it's like a weekly process that we go through and making sure all the deadlines are met and making sure that students will be able to enter the school building on the time that they decided. Facilities planning is ongoing all the time. These facilities master plans that we talked about, a lot of times they're 5 years. And so in that process of 5 years, I know in the state of New Mexico, you need to renew it every 5 years. We're always in the process of making sure that each one of the schools within our network has a facilities master plan. It's an ongoing process and it's always a conversation. Even without that requirement, each one of the schools has different needs every single year. And so we want to make sure their needs are being met on an annual basis. Most communities have never done this before, and so there is a knowledge gap that they have. Obviously, it obstructs the timeline. It could be a huge challenge for the schools to open on time or to open at all if they don't have the knowledge in which to do it. Timing is huge. Just because you want a school today doesn't mean it's going to be built today.
One of the challenges I've noticed as we've worked with schools when they're working on their school design plan and they're thinking about facilities has really been our school sizes. People aren't yet ready for this innovation that we're doing. A lot of times our schools are on the smaller end, and that also means that a lot of CDFIs are a little weary of lending to schools who are so small in their capacity. And so that has been a challenge for us, is finding funding resources for schools. Even though some of our schools have been renewed by charter several times, we're still having challenges seeking funding and seeking lenders for some of our schools.
My steepest learning curve was definitely the business aspect of building and opening a school. As an educator, we think about teaching and learning and the curriculum and the student experience and activities. Schools are a business. I mean, there's just so many things that you have to know.
We've had a lot of lessons that we've learned. Early on, we asked for forgiveness. We've learned now to ask for permission first. And really bringing in approving entities at the very beginning has been number one. You got to learn who's going to give you approval in the end. That's the way we've looked at it, is what does it look like at the end? Who's going to be there at the end approving it? Once we know who that is, then we can actually start the process. I would recommend actually hiring people to learn the codes and learning all of those kind of processes, because it's impossible for one entity to know everything. But we know if you bring in partners and you bring in good contractors and technical experts, they can actually guide you through that process.
When it comes to facility, when it comes to contractors, when it comes to contracts and permitting, it's super important that you have folks that know what they're doing and that can assist you in that process, because you are running a business.
One of the challenges we have is finding a balance to that. How much do you push contractors? How much do you try and push the community to make a decision? How much do you push the school leader? And then how much do you pull back and let the school leader lead? How much do you pull back and let the actual entity make their decisions? Those things could either work for you or against you. And so we've learned to try and find a balance of which each one of those entities or organization or even government approving authorities, because we just know that if you push too much, works against you. If you pull off too much and you're not pushing, it can also work against you. So it's a delicate balance. My advice is to learn from as many people as you possibly can. People that have gone before you and done this before. The Deep School was a perfect example because they were able to overcome all the challenges that they had within that community and navigate the process to open their school on time. And the NACA Inspired Schools Network was so proud to be part of that process. You're not alone in this, and we're here to support you. We've created a resource hub that you can take part in, use as much as you need.
We're really lucky to have an organization like NISN because they were really trailblazers. NACA was really a trailblazer for all of us because they've been through it all. I've really been able to rely on them for expertise and support, and we wouldn't have been able to be successful without it.